What? Deconverted man here. Okay, so Yahweh's dumb. The God of the Bible is dumb. And why do I say that? Well, of course, I don't believe that the God of the Bible is real, but if it was real, it's really dumb. And here's my reason why. Okay, so this is the Old Testament world. And in this place, this is where everything that happens in the Old Testament basically happens. This small little chunk out of a giant earth where other things are going on. Like over here, this little piece of land, there's stuff going on there. There's stuff going on here, stuff going on there, you know, and then if you scroll back, of course, and you look at the entire earth, there's a ton of other histories going on right now. And yet God, the real God, has decided to tell a small group of people in this area somewhere that it exists. The rest of humanity is living and dying and worshiping the wrong gods, and Yahweh has seen fit to only tell a select number of people in this very small area. And I find that to be dumb. The other problem, of course, is the dating of the Bible. People like to say the Bible's like 2,000 years old. Well, it's old, but we don't really like the oldest writing we have seems to be Numbers, and that's, you know, dated to 587-ish BCE. So that's pretty old, but it's still not as old as people would like it to be, you know, or make it out to be. And it's still, we're relying on writing, relying on word of mouth to transmit the idea of God, the real God, from person to person and place to place. But what's going on in the rest of the world? You've got God in a very small area of the world telling people how to live and what to do or what not to do. And meanwhile, everywhere else, you know, nobody knows what to do. So in this era, maybe a little bit before then, you know, God has, you know, before here, sometime God has told some people stuff, and eventually they write it down. It takes them a while to write it down. We've got Dead Sea Scrolls, you know, of course, fragments of that. You know, we've got all these different things that are, some of them are complete, some of them are fragments. And this is the system that this God has decided is fine. It's fine to communicate its message to humanity. Is a system that is not well preserved, which is writing, and very few people in that area know how to write. So that's another dumb move by Yahweh. Don't know, all these people. Go to Asia. They at least had writing there. Or, my word, teach the people how to make a printing press. Could have done that. No. So the rest of the world, living and dying as God only reveals itself to a very handful, limited number of people. And by the way, waits for goodness knows how long before doing that, you know, revealing itself to Abraham. How long did that take? That's millions of years. Oh, of course, well, unless you're a creationist, then it's only 1,000 some odd years, and you can believe that, well, Adam and Eve were told, and they told their kids. Here's the problem I have with that, though, is why would Cain tell his wife that he had killed his brother? Like, how would that story have survived? Like, maybe his parents told, but then why would his wife stay with him? It's just, of course, well, his wife would have to be his mom, I guess, or his sister. So, maybe they knew the story and they just, went ahead and were married anyways, or didn't get married. I don't know. So even if you're a creationist, you still have a lot of history that's happening outside of that, because you have a rapid expansion and explosion of humanity if you're a creationist, because you have a very limited time that humanity has to get to the numbers that we have today, and you don't have enough time to work with. So you have ridiculous numbers being born to families that just isn't supported by any history that we have. People had a lot of kids, but the birth rate was very low. Survivability was very low. So it just doesn't work out the way they would need to. But if you agree with biological evolution, then you have this problem that God, picked 2 random people to represent all of humanity. So that's still way back, the first time that humans would have understood language, or did God specially create Adam and Eve? Like, you don't know, because the Bible doesn't really explain how it's actually working. So you have to cram it into, history somewhere and have to just assert that it's there. So again, Yahweh didn't bother explaining to whoever's writing it down, hey, this is how to do it. And that's the other thing. Who wrote any of it down? We don't know. Nobody knows. Like almost like every single author is unknown for the Bible, for every part of the Bible that we actually have. And then there's parts we don't have. This is dumb. This is the real God that's doing this? Really? It selected a tiny part of the world. Now, of course, the Jewish tradition is that God chose the Hebrews. They were really low and down, and he was going to rise them up and show the world how amazing of a God he was. Now, then the early Jews, conquered a lot of places, got a lot of land, and did pretty well for themselves for a while. And then, as time went on, they kind of got the short end of the stick, later in history, they get, moved away, you get them killed in the Holocaust, all this different stuff happens to them. But, a lot of them survive, and, they're business people and, and doing different stuff nowadays. And, some of them are hard up and some of them are well off, but nothing about their history really sparks of divine intervention. Nothing that they did as a people really makes you go, whoa, man, how did they do that? Like, you don't step back when hearing their history and go, wow, that's no way. Humans could not have done that, because we've seen other groups of people conquer lands with or without a deity behind them, quote unquote. And of course, having a deity belief is a good way to unify your soldiers and a good way to start a holy war. So there's a naturalistic explanation for an invented God, or a God that already existed, because Yahweh already existed. And so if there was a single guy named Abraham, he took Yahweh to be his God, because Yahweh was the word God. And of course, we're just going to write out Ashtaroth, the wife of Yahweh, because nobody cares about that. And so we're just going to make it a different religion, just because, that's what's going to happen. And that's what does happen. But that's, we're pretending that Yahweh actually is a real thing and isn't just another God that humans have made up, because, well, this is the real God. That's what we're told in the West. That's what we're told, that Christians believe that this God is real. All the other ones, they're made up. All the other ones, that are fake. But this one that shows this little land, this little teeny tiny part of the world, communicated very inefficiently to the people, didn't do anything very remarkable with the people that it shows. Then later says, actually, I'm not just choosing the Jewish people. Actually, I'm here for everybody that accepts the death of my son. Everyone else that doesn't accept that, they're screwed. So I guess when Jesus was around, then you have a different problem. You have the problem that nobody outside of that small area knew about Jesus. So how could they accept Jesus's supposed death and resurrection if they never heard about Jesus? So, what's going on, in Asia and North America and, Africa, what's going on over there is you have people living and dying and being born and having different gods and the wrong gods because they have no idea that Jesus even exists at that time. So they're all screwed. At least if hell exists, well, but see, then the apologists will make up excuses like, well, they know that God exists, so as long as they believed in a God, they were okay. Well, because that's put in their heart, like everybody knows that. Even though the part that says that God is known by everybody is actually directed at people who already knew about Jesus, not about like everyone in general. But that's look. The excuse is, or I mean, the explanation is like everyone else, they're fine. Like there's a way that appeal to God's mystery. We don't, no, Yahweh's dumb. That's the answer. Is that this God is dumb. More, just about as dumb as all the other gods, maybe more dumb. Because it's not doing things in a way that makes any coherent sense for an actual real God. So I was thinking about this, how amazing it is that you have to believe that God picked a tiny spot of the world to reveal itself in, and that humanity is the one that spreads God's message. Humans did that. There's no divine agency there. It's humans doing the legwork, spreading the word, which is actually weird too, because if you have this idea that everyone knows God exists, but then you tell them about the Jesus story and they don't believe it, then they're screwed because they didn't believe the Jesus story. Whereas before, they wouldn't have been screwed without knowing the Jesus story because they at least believed in God. So why are you telling them that Jesus exists and risking their salvation because you've been told to tell them about the Jesus story, which doesn't make sense from God's view, but makes sense from a human view because you want the message to be spread. Because a God that was smart wouldn't do that. A dumb God would. So Yahweh's dumb. My conclusion from these sort of things. So that's really all I had for this one, I guess. Kind of a short message that Yahweh is dumb. Not much to see here. More the typical, jaded skeptic complaining about a non-existent thing. So I got some people in chat. Let's say hi to them. Spooky Bedhair, Ing613, Lord Ship Mayhem, keen to his wife. I killed your older brother, sister, wife. Yeah. Did Adam and Eve have belly buttons? Yeah, well, if they were specially created, maybe they could have. If God created them that way, and even if they weren't, then yeah, they would have. Snuff says hi. Hey, YouTube Creator Content Association, just did a thing. The idea of Yahweh is kind of dumb, but it's another myth. Yes, I agree. The character of Yahweh obviously was not even the God Christians believe in today. And that's true. Yeah, Yahweh has evolved so much throughout time. The original Yahweh that was married to, I want to say Escher, but no, Escher, not Escher. I don't remember now, but whatever. That Yahweh is a very different Yahweh than the ones that Christian or even the Jews believe in. Like the Yahweh that the Jews believe in is very different from the original Yahweh. And that's again because humans have decided, well, this is how we're going to view this God. We're going to look at it this way. We're going to understand it this way. People say, oh, you know, I was this guy that won't debate God's existence, even though he's an apologist, has debated theological problems with the Bible with other theists. And I'm just like, yeah, that's interesting. You're just debating fanfic at this point. You're not. The reason why no one agrees is because there is no way to get to an agreement. There's no scientific method of understanding what the Bible is really supposed to say. Because you can take any passage and say, oh, this means that. And then the other person can take the same exact passage and say, no, it means that. And there's no science to theology. Otherwise you would see a collective coming together instead of a collective separation. And so again, Yahweh is dumb. Arisha, that's it. Thank you. Arisha is the wife of Yahweh. But at any rate, the belief that you, if you're a believer, have to have is that God waited thousands upon thousands of years to reveal itself to one person, Abraham. And then eventually, I guess, reveal all the story to Moses to write down way later on. So like up until then, they had no idea what God was doing, I guess. Like it's incoherent. And it's a dumb God. It's a really dumb God. But this is the God that 33% some odd of the human race believes in. The God of the Bible. But what's weird is that although a lot of people believe Jesus rose from the dead, they can't name the disciples. They have no idea what else the Bible says. So a lot of people hold these beliefs and have just not thought about them really deeply. And that's a problem. I was talking to somebody on YouTube that actually admitted that God was just faith, which was refreshing to see somebody admit that. And I said, okay, well, is faith way is faith a good way to know what's right? And they said, no, it's not. Like, it's about just what we have. And I'm like, you also have facts. What about that? Of course, then the conversation ended. They didn't want to continue it. Because I was asking them if they personally thought that, in this case, it was a discussion of marriage. The Bible says this. And I'm like, so what? Who cares? That's what you think the Bible says. But it kind of doesn't. But also, even if it did, so what? Yeah. Well, then you also, of course, have the problems of how long these people in the Bible lived. A bunch of people in the Old Testament lived to ridiculous ages. But this is excused away as either and this is one viewpoint is Adam is actually a tribe of people. And so the tribe lived for 935 years. They existed as a tribe for that long. Okay, well then who was Adam? Well, Adam was like the first person of that tribe or something like that. Or you just go, oh yeah, God let them live that long because they needed to produce more kids, I guess. I mean, I don't know. But we would, if Adam lived that long, wouldn't we have his bones if the earth was only like 6,000 years old? Like why wouldn't we have found those by now? I don't know. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's all I really had was just to, I was thinking about this and thinking about how you got this little teeny tiny part of the world that God would have to reveal itself in, and how ridiculous that really is. So keep thinking, keep asking critical questions, and if we're willing and able to challenge whatever we hold most dear, we'll be better off than if we just choose faith. Thanks for watching. Until next time, lobsters exist, I guess. I mean, that's it. I got, yeah. Finn!